So I know you've not been passing the plate because of COVID, but today we're going to do a share the plate. And that is for the South Carolina Unitarian Universalist Justice Alliance. And I'm going to be telling you a lot more about this new alliance in the sermon. One of the things we're seeking to do is to lift up all voices. And one of the things that we at the Justice Alliance want us to do, and this ties in with the children's story, is to say something to our legislatures about bills that would curtail the teaching of history, to our leaders that peace is better than war, to each other that we can bring hope to ourselves and those around us, especially those suffering from hunger or homelessness, loneliness, or despair. Today at your church, we are launching a matching grant for $5,000. Every gift to the South Carolina Justice Alliance will be matched, but it's an all or nothing match. So hopefully you will be able to give a bit. There's a QR code if you have a cell phone that you want to use. There's information about SCUJA on the back of the order of worship. And I'll be sort of referencing the website. The website's pretty easy. It's SCUUJA, SCUJA, South Carolina Unitarian Universalist Justice Alliance. So, as you think about this opportunity to give, here are some offering words by Heather Christensen. Unitarian Universalism is a grand vision of a world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. No matter its size, every congregation depends on each of its members, every one of you. And every one of you, by your commitment of time, energy, and resources, you help make that grand vision real. Individually and together, we are Unitarian Universalists, building that world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. So I'm going to do two really short readings, and it's okay to laugh, okay? The first one is by Martin Luther King Jr. Everybody can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve, and you don't have to make your subject and verb agree. Okay? You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. And our second short reading is by Mother Teresa. Love cannot remain by itself. It has no meaning. Love has to be put into action, and that action is service. Whatever form we are, able or disabled, rich or poor, it is not how much we do, but how much love we put into the doing. A lifelong sharing of love with others. It's wonderful to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me. I've had a couple of discussions with your minister and with Dell Kimbler of your Social Action Committee. Is Dell here today? Nope. Okay. Well, I enjoy being here in Clemson. My sister and her husband live nearby on Lake Hartwell. My niece graduated from Clemson, and yesterday I took a walk in your camellia garden on the Clemson campus. Really lovely. So today I'm going to be speaking about the newly formed South Carolina UU Justice Alliance. What we call it SCUJA, kind of like scuba but with a J, SCUJA. What SCUJA can do for you and what you can help us do. And before I do that, I want to say just a little bit more about Ukraine because it's been so much on our hearts and minds. And I know that you probably have watched the news reports the same way I have and read about it. And this is one of the things that I don't know exactly what SCUJA could do, but it is one of the ways where we wonder together what we can do. I know we can pray if we pray, and if you donate funds, there are lots of places to donate funds. You can write letters of advocacy. You can hold peace vigils. Now is the time, though, that we find out what we can be doing with each other. We reach out. So the theme of this sermon is better together. And that's what I hope we can do with Ukraine as well, better together. So what is the model of SCUJA? What is it? Well, it's a Unitarian Universalist state action network. And not all states have state action networks, but a lot of them have them, over half, and many more are joining in recently. Our aim with SCUJA is to bring together UUs from across the whole state in justice activities. And of course, we want to work for justice for all, everyone, as we affirm the inherent dignity and worth of every person. And to do that best, we believe that we UUs can form partnerships that center the voices and authority of people actually experiencing injustice, especially people of color, LGBTQ folks, immigrant, and houseless people. Now here's how I came to the realization that I would engage in this work for justice across the state. So as Holly mentioned, I've mostly been a professor of religion and anthropology. I'm a UU community minister, and at the small college of Hastings College, I was professor of religion, professor of anthropology, director of service learning, and a UU community minister. You know, like how many hats can one person wear? small places. Hastings College was small. They want you to put on many different roles. So I worked there for many years before retiring and coming home to South Carolina. And I did justice work with the students. We did Habitat for Humanity. We made sack lunches for a program that would feed anyone who asked for help. We packed rice and soy products to be shipped abroad to feed hungry people. And many of our students came to have a true commitment for helping others. One example that I can give, it kind of broke my heart. Our student teachers were out in the schools, and on Monday morning, they found that many students couldn't concentrate. And they couldn't concentrate because they were so hungry. And so our school, like many others, came up with a backpack program. And so our school raised the money, did all the distribution for 100 families a year, year after year after year. They basically ran a nonprofit. But they also ask, and I'm sure you have asked at one time or another, why do so many families need help? Why couldn't everybody in the small town of Hastings find affordable housing? This one also broke my heart when I was talking to people at one of the large retirement places we had in town, and they talked about the elderly folks who lived there who had to make a choice between food or their prescriptions. They couldn't have both. And then another question that we asked was, why do we at the college so often take the lead? Why do we think we know what other folks need? And that really, really hit home to me about halfway through my tenure at Hastings College, because here we were, the students were feeding all these people in the community, they were doing all this work, and then some students came to me and said, you know what? We have hungry people on our campus. And I was like, but we're a small liberal arts college. How can that be? But it was true. In fact, it was so true that we found out about 1 in 10 students needed a lot of help with food. So we started a pantry for our own students. It was a real lesson learned for me. You can do a lot of good work, but you also need to listen to the community around you. So how do you do that? Well, it's kind of simple, but also hard. You have to listen, and you have to go someplace where somebody will tell you something. So you listen and listen and listen. And then there's so many ways to respond, from the local to the national to the international. So we need that direct service, making those sandwiches. But we also need advocacy work, talking to our legislators. Every year, not every year, but most every year, I would take students with me to Washington, D.C., and there we would advocate for justice with our senators and House of Representatives folks. And we would ask for better bills to feed people, to house people, to provide health care, to reform the legal justice system. When I moved back to South Carolina in the fall of 2020, I was committed to working on issues at the state level. Could we pass Medicaid expansion? Could we change laws on things like payday loans, which can often be up to like 400%? Could we do better at talking to the people who are affected and listening to them? And of course, I believe all the answers are yes. We all know that we'll take a network of committed people to accomplish all those tasks. And if we're going to listen well to others, we'll have to form partnerships with folks who are on the margins, who are experiencing injustice, and sometimes they may even be in our own congregations. Don't always know. So we need to listen in our churches and listen outside our churches. I find inspiration in my anthropologist forebearer, Margaret Mead, and if you've ever heard a quote from her, this is probably the one you know. I believe it's in our hymnal. She famously said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." Small group of committed citizens. So I'm here in South Carolina, and I'm like, so what can I do? And I find out about UU State Action Networks. I didn't actually know we had them. They didn't have one in Nebraska. And folks said to me, well, maybe you can start one. And I was like, are you kidding me? But then I found out the Reverend Pippin Whitaker, and I believe she visited you folks recently. She was interested in it. And then late leader Rick Hennenberg in Spartanburg was also interested. So we started to come together and talk about it and explore what we could do. And then we started talking with ministers and lay leaders. We found there was a lot of interest. So we wrote a startup grant, and we received funding from this long name, the UU Funding Program, Fund for UU Social Responsibility. But we got the startup money, and now we're going around the state to UU churches to see what you all think, and if we have the resources to continue our work after the grant ends. So we're only in I guess this is the start of our third month of formal operation. So we're not very old. But we've already accomplished something that I think is pretty big. And that is because our state legislature introduced 6 bills that would curtail the teaching of history. And I realized when I read those bills that if I were still teaching, I couldn't teach things like the Trail of Tears or accurately teach the Civil Rights Movement or things like Plessy versus Ferguson or so many issues of injustice. So Reverend Lisa Bovey-Kemper of the Greenville Church wrote the first draft of a letter in response to those bills. Then our new South Carolina Justice Alliance got on board, and we sent information to all the churches. And right now, I think we're standing at somewhere between, about 179 signatures from all across the state. Those have been sent to the Education Committee at the state legislature. Reverend Pippin, I, Rick, other folks have talked with their legislative leaders, and Reverend Pippin is going to testify before the committee on Tuesday. So we're better when we work together. 170 names, wow. We can state what we believe in and what we think is right. So that draws on this newly forming statewide network. And that's just one way that we can advocate for justice. We need to hear your ideas and figure out where to focus our efforts. We have so many things to work toward. And then in talking with Reverend Christina Andell, I know that your congregation has taken a big lead in the Clemson area pledge to end racism, CAPER. I understand that now there are 11 congregations involved with CAPER. That's great. Dell told me that he's been working with Braver Angels and would like the congregation to work with Braver Angels. And that's a way to talk across the polarization that we've got in our community. I know that you work to help the homeless and the food insecure. You work with Habitat for Humanity, Our Daily Rest, Family Promise, Ripple of One, and so much more. Better together. You work together as a congregation on all those justice issues, You work with the county and other congregations. And now hopefully you can work together with the UU Justice Alliance across the state. What gives me hope is how all these actions taken together energize us. I know when I first started working with students, now I was a lot older than them, and I would be there and they would be like, well, this year we can do more. And I'm thinking to myself, really? We can do more? And they would do it. And I'm like, good for you. You have so much energy. It's wonderful to see that. And keep at it. You know, it's really, the more we do together, the more we can do together. So they would reach out to the community, to their professors, to other people, sometimes even to their parents or so on. And we would work together in ever-widening circles. Now, it does take funding and effort, and guess what? It doesn't always work out, that what you do comes to fruition as soon as you would like it. I know that there's so much we need to do about climate change. There's so much to do on economic justice, so much to do to bring about an end toward war. But the only way we can do it is to reach out to each other, become committed citizens, do the work. So I hope you can stay for conversation after lunch. Share your ideas. I want you to sign up if you want to our newsletter, get meeting invitations, opportunities to be inspired by your fellow UUs, learn how to connect. The sign up, and a lot of information is on the back of your bulletin, so their website and so on. So answering your call for love and justice, answering your dreams as we move across the state. We envision with the South Carolina Justice Alliance working for mutual support of local social action and state action. We want to help folks get engaged, collaborate on statewide issues. There's six statewide issues that came up in our first meeting. I'll share those in the workshop. And hopefully you'll find some joy and inspiration that comes from knowing others are involved with this. And another big piece of this is you don't have to invent the wheel over and over again. Somebody else has often done some piece of it. With SCUJA, we're building a diverse board, cultivating partners. We seek both board members and staff members who are members of impacted groups in our work. And of course, as asked earlier, we do need funds. Sustained work in South Carolina will need financial support from congregations, from individual visionary givers, maybe you. And if you want to make a gift, Susie's going to project that slide again at the end of the service after we're all done. So you'll have an opportunity, and it's also on the back of the sheet there. We accept all gifts joyfully, but you know, money's one thing. Another thing is your commitment. We need your gifts of presence, the gifts of sharing what are your hopes and dreams, what you need to do to accomplish your justice work. We need to be in relationship with you so that you inform who it is that this very small organization, only 2 and a couple of days old, does. Let us get together and find our path to more justice, because, you know, we are better together.